Didn't get quite those overseas, but they have certainly wobbled since Donald Trump on Sunday did not directly answer a question about whether the US would fall into recession this year. So in less than a month, the Australian stock market, as I said, down by 8.5%. You can see over the 1 month, it's down by 7%, but the highs were about 3 weeks ago. The US tech NASDAQ is down 10.4% in that time. One of the hardest hit, Tesla, its shares down 32% in a month. And that prompted Donald Trump on his platform Truth Social just an hour ago to declare that he's out to buy a brand new Tesla tomorrow as a show of confidence and support for Elon Musk. Musk, no surprise here, shared that post around. So let's now turn to two of Australia's foremost portfolio managers. Anton Tagliaferro, founder of Investors Mutual. June Bailu, founder at an investment manager at 10Cap. I'll start with you, Anton. Is this a buying or a selling opportunity?
Look, I think it's going to be volatile for a while, Ross. I mean,
by volatile, you mean it's going to go down for a while?
It's going to be up and down. Look, the whole dialogue has changed from is the Fed going to cut and is inflation under control to everything's up in the air now. You know, tariffs in the US, immigration, you name it. Imagine trying to be a CFO in the US, deciding am I importing fruit this week or am I not because the tariff might come in or it might not, or shall I build a plant here or shall I not? So it's absolute chaos everywhere.
Okay, are you trying to underweight Australian equities in your portfolio now?
No, look, we invest mainly in Australian equities, but again, we're on the value end, you know, and as you know, the US market has been led a lot by the NASDAQ, the Magnificent Seven, all the AI hype. You could say it's got a bit overhyped. And look, it needed a correction. It's almost been a one-way bet since COVID, actually. So this is a sort of necessary shake-up. And as I said, the truth is there is a lot of chaos and confusion and nobody really knows from week to week. And, you know, in a month or two, will we have tariffs or will we not? And, you know, all these things are up in the air. So as I said, the narrative has gone from talking about the Fed cutting rates, inflation under control, blah, 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 so now no one's quite sure what to talk about.
So it's interesting. June Bailu, you've got the same issue right now, but you have a long-short fund, so you can short if you think the prices are going to continue to fall. Are you taking more of those opportunities or are you looking for more buying opportunities right now?
I think when the market is a free fall like this, particularly for some sectors, it's actually more buy-side-led opportunities where you see. But as a long-short manager, our benefit is that we can short something else on the other side. So I can buy, for example, Promedicus fall significantly today, buy the high-quality business like that and short a whole lot of unprofitable tech on the other side. So this is a benefit of long-short fund. We can buy anything, even when it's out of favour.
I get that, but so have you been actively seeking those tech shares to try and short them over a period of time? And have they been here in Australia or have they been in America?
Look, I think here in Australia, we certainly have a lot of very expensive tech companies. We have been increasing short in that space in the last few months, simply because we do see entering this year, we see this rotation taking place. We just think cyclically there will be improvement in the economic condition, particularly here in Australia, with the rate cut cycle to happen. You know, US clearly at the moment is a little bit different from what we thought, simply because the uncertainty with the trade and affecting consumer confidence and people stop spending, and then the corporates becoming a bit more cautious. But domestically, we actually think cyclical things are fine. So relative to tech companies, they just look much cheaper. So this is what we're actually looking to pick up in this environment. But of course, when some of the high quality business that gets sold off, this is your time to buy.
I'll tell you what, one thing is the mining sector in particular has been hammered in Australia. We're talking Fortescue, we're talking BHP, we're talking Rio. All of them have come off 20 and 30% from their highs. The question is whether they now represent some of the big buying opportunities or whether you see other places that you're hunting right now.
Well, again, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because a lot of those companies are exporters and they export mainly to China, right? So there's been question marks over China. Obviously, the tariffs from the US complicate the sort of outlook for China. Looks like China's going to concentrate on its domestic economy, so that may be good for the iron ore price. But once again, it's far from certain, Ross.
All right, so give me a bit of concrete here. What are you buying right now? What actually looks like it's reasonable to buy?
As I've said, you know, we're value buyers. We tend to be contrarian, you know. So I like things like, I mean, people probably go, but that's why we like them, because they value. You know, Horizon, which has got owns a lot of rail infrastructure, and a lot of it's not contributing at the moment. Things like GWA, we quite like Sonic Healthcare when it comes down, major international business, pathology, not really that influenced by cycles. And in terms of cycle, I'm not as bullish on the Australian economy. We have a major election coming up in the next couple of months. And, all sorts of scenarios come up there in terms of what sort of government we end up with and what sort of policies we have in Australia. So that's an added uncertainty.
That is so true. I was going to actually raise that because that's a really good point that Anton makes. Right now, you don't know after the election whether you have a country that goes to the right under a Peter Dutton-led government or whether it may go hard left if you have a coalition of Labor and the Greens. That must be pretty hard if you're an investor right now.
Absolutely. As if you're taking a significant bet, then it is what does the policy look like right now. It's still not yet very clear. But all we can see at the moment is the Australian economy is holding up okay. And then we have the rate cut has already started taking place. And then we have 3 more, at least, priced in by economists. And with the backdrop, what's happening in the US, these cuts are coming. And maybe even sooner than everyone expects.
Okay, and you saw even today the consumer confidence has picked up a touch.
Absolutely.
Since that we saw last week, say, the Australian economy shows some signs that maybe there is a pickup in the economy as compared with this time last year.
That's right. So I do think that in this period where all our consumer stock being sold off because of the US consumer stock being sold off, it presents great opportunity. Now, of course, in a few months' time, when the election gets called, there might be a bit more uncertainty. And if the policy becomes very different, we'll continue to watch. But at this point, they look very cheap for what is to come.
Okay, but then one other aspect of that. Junbei says the growth is coming, but the stock price run had already taken place. Assuming there was going to be some rebound in the Australian economy, we were at record levels 3 weeks ago here. The question was whether the earnings of these companies actually justified being at those record levels.
Well, Ross, as I think I mentioned last time, the problem is the Australian market has gone up substantially, quite not as high as the US. It's been dragged up by the US, and a lot of it's been tech stocks, fabulous companies there reporting record earnings, whatever. We haven't really had a lot of earnings growth in Australia, from a lot of the major companies. So if you look at stocks like CBA and Wesfarmers, I mean, to us, they look fairly ridiculous, on P's of 20-something, barely growing, but they're being dragged up by this sort of euphoria that's been caused by the US, right?
But okay, then you've also got the index funds that actually have to go and chase.
That's right. Yeah, but that's a short, and that's noise, Ross. So eventually, the fundamentals, we're a big believer, the fundamentals will come through, and at some stage, those stocks have got to come back to more realistic levels.
All right, then, so does that give you an opportunity as well? Did you see those banking stocks as being over-egged, that really they've been pumped up by a lot of them, money chasing them through the index funds? And so were they opportunities for you for short selling to actually take profits whereas those prices were falling?
Yeah, absolutely. So last month, we actually had a great month just with the banks underperforming because the first time in the year and a bit that they actually didn't deliver to expectations. CBA is the only one sort of outlier, but everything else disappointed. So maybe that's a start of something. We do think the banks will underperform, but strangely today, in this massive sell-off, banks are actually holding up really well. So it's almost in a way that investors treating banks as a defensive play because it's domestic. But I do think the banks are very, very expensive. When we talk about rotation, you want to move into other companies as much cheaper.
But seeing big swings, that's the thing about the market right now, isn't it, Anton?
Well, Ross, Trump's come in. He's got a $1 trillion a year trade deficit. He's got a $2 trillion a year budget deficit. He's trying to sort immigration, tariffs, DOGE, equality. He's trying to do everything in sort of 6 weeks, right? Everything's up in the air. And as I said, so the narrative has gone from we were talking Fed cuts, inflation under control, to now kind of everything's up in the air, right? So
tell you what, it's going to be fascinating just to watch it. We'll get the two of you back here again very shortly. So again, give an update. But to Anton Tagliaferro, to Junbei Liu, many thanks for your time on the program today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.